My name is Frank Griffiths. I'm the Vice President of Products and Services at Verismic Software. And the theme of the presentation for the next 25-30 minutes is going to be around making sure that we involve our end users in order to identify the wins associated with that. Okay. Before I go into the agenda, I'd like to bring up two considerations for you, and we'll revisit these throughout the presentation. The first is a fact. A primary driver toward any successful project is the full involvement of the stakeholder. Okay, so that's not news to any of us. What is different with PC power management and similar kind of systems management projects is that in this case the end user is actually our stakeholder. That is kind of new. And what we've identified, and I'll present this later, is that if we don't involve the end user within our projects, the success you're going to get from the project is going to be kind of limited. Okay, so let's have a look at the agenda for this presentation today. The first is, I'm going to give you a quick introduction as to who Verismic are, my company, why Green IT makes sense. We're going to quash 4 or 5 myths associated with PC power management. And then I'm going to go through a scenario of a project and breaking it down into 5 logical stages, 5 logical steps, and looking at the considerations within each of those steps in order to achieve a successful PC power management implementation. We'll then have a quick look at Verismic Power Manager as an overview, and we're doing demonstrations out there all day, and version 3.2 of Verismic Power Manager was released today, and it includes a standalone PC power management agent, which kind of drives into involving the end user even more. And then we'll have 5 minutes hopefully at the end to answer any questions that you may have. Okay, so Verismic Software, who are we? We were founded in 1996 under the guise of Network D. Verismic itself was formed in 2009 as our development division. And our flagship solution is Verismic Power Manager, as we're talking about today. We've got 250 employees across the world, and we operate within 7 countries globally. So green is everywhere. Here's some examples, some magazines, and some facts associated with this. And this is what we've found, and basically, based on statistics released by Gartner and similar organisations, 3/4 of executives predict an increased government regulation on the environment. And we're seeing that today within Australia as an example, where they've really implemented serious legislation around this area, and we can see that spreading. 3/4 of companies anticipate spending more on their environmental programs. PC power management is just one area of that, of course. 80% of all data centres report capacity concerns. So that's one area we can really target. Reduce the power consumption within the data centres in addition to the desktop. And 85% of the largest retailers are involved in green practices. Okay, so it's not going to go away. We have a serious opportunity at the moment to do something serious in the area of PC power management in order to contribute towards the larger effort. So what is PC power management? So PC power management refers to the mechanism for controlling or reducing power consumption on a computer. Typically, that involves taking the machine from a fully working state into a state where it's using less power. The best solutions do this in a highly controlled and quantifiable manner. And what I mean by quantifiable, it means that you can measure the reduction and you can present that back in the form of eye-catching reports, which actually mean something, both in financial savings and carbon reduction. So, simplifying this concept, what we're talking about, what we're actually talking about is that if you've got a machine that's being used, that's great. We don't want to touch that. That's giving productivity to your business. But when you walk away, or when the end user walks away from that machine remains in a state that's on, and it's not being used, they're the minutes that we're after. So for every minute that that machine is in an on state and not actually being productive for your environment, that's our target. Okay? So if we just simply go in there and turn off the machine when everyone goes away and grabs a coffee, then clearly the end user is going to come back and they're going to have to reboot or start their machine again, and they're not going to be happy. So involving the end user is extremely important, because they're going to have to see and understand why, when they walk away to grab a coffee, they come back and their machine's off. They're going to have to want to see why that is, or they're not going to put up with it. It's a fact. In addition to that, Verismic PC power management involves a concept of dynamic efficiency. Has anyone ever heard of dynamic efficiency? So dynamic efficiency is a mechanism where we've gone through every single criteria of activity on an operating system, and we've taken every single opportunity to change a setting in order to use less power. And there's something in the region of about 35 to 40 settings, typically, that we can change on a PC, things like disabling screensavers, disabling graphics acceleration when it's not required, etc. 35 to 40 settings that we've built a power policy around, that we can actually reduce power consumption by 20% without having any impact to the user whatsoever. They can use their machine, and they're saving 20%. And not only are they saving 20% in power, they're also, for the travelling users, extending their battery life by 20%. So it's a real win. There's also the concept of exclusion. And what I mean by that is that if we want to implement a PC power management process across the business, there's going to be a number of machines, typically 5%, that say, you know what, I don't want that on my machine because I need to be excluded, because I need to access it at weekends or evenings, I need it to be on so that I can remotely access it. So now we've designed and implemented a process whereby you can wake up your machine using one of these from home, securely and safely. So in that way, you don't need to be excluded from the deployment of the power policy. And when you want to access your machine, you just simply open an app, click wake up, it wakes your machine up, you remote in, do the work, and then clearly when you disconnect, after a period of time, it's going to turn off again. Our objectives have been around making sure that we can have maximum deployment of the power policies that have the least impact to the end user. And what I mean by that is there is not a situation where one policy fits every single business. Every single business clearly works differently. So it's a case of monitoring and learning how your business operates, identifying when those available minutes of the machine being in on state but not used are happening. And then once you've got that information, you've learned that information, do an analysis on it, and then you can write power policies in order to target those minutes without impacting the end user. We'll come on to them in a little bit more detail in a moment. Okay, so a couple of facts. PC power management is an aspect of Green IT which is amazingly and surprisingly regularly unmanaged. A lot of people are talking about it. Very few organisations are doing it effectively. That's what we're finding. Where implemented seriously, PC power management can drive considerable savings through reduced power consumption. And those savings are both financial and environmental. Okay? And we'll look at some of the figures and actually pounds and amounts associated with these savings shortly. I think this is more now based around £70 per year, the industry standard for the amount of savings that you can potentially save per year using PC power management. And this is simply, remember, just an analysis of targeting those minutes where the machine's in an on state and we don't want it to be. By targeting those minutes in the most structural and intelligent way, and through the implementation of Verismic dynamic efficiency, which allows us to target 20% savings even when the machine is on, we can save up to, and it says 60 there, but more like £70 per machine per year. For some larger organisations, that's a huge amount of money. And even for smaller organisations, it's compelling. I think you'll agree. So let's quash some myths associated with PC power management. Green IT is expensive. Well, it's not. It's a fact that it's not. If you buy any solution and then don't use it properly, yeah, you probably won't get an ROI on that solution. That's a fact. So it's all about making sure that you design a project, and we'll talk about that aspect in a moment, and clearly the involvement of the end users is the important part of that. It's about designing and implementing a project which does it properly, and it's very unusual to have an ROI on our solution above 6 months. My OS power management can say the same. Not true. Remember, if you've got a solution which can identify the behaviour of your business and target those minutes based on that behaviour, you've got to make some assumptions when you're implementing power management savings with the OS itself, and it'll either be a lot more intrusive or a lot less effective in savings. Only enterprise-sized companies can see real savings. Well, it's per machine, clearly. So if you've got 10 machines, you do the maths. If you've got Honeywell 130,000 machines, then clearly the savings are huge. You'll be somewhere between the two, I would think. Screensavers save power. Does anyone seriously think that's true? Okay, so I've heard it from a few people. Screensavers save power. Well, surely if you've got pipes being drawn on your screen, then it's using more power than if you've got a blank screen or the monitor's turned off completely. Okay, so a few myths. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to just give you some considerations associated with implementing a PC power management solution effectively and properly. I referred back to the statement I made a moment ago. You buy any solution, then don't use it properly or implement it properly, the success you're going to get is either going to be zero or limited. So it's important to approach a project such as this in a project-oriented way, and that's what we've done here. We've broken it down into 5 logical steps. And the logical steps, you won't be surprised to see, involve the involvement of our stakeholders more than any other project. And those stakeholders in this case, remember, are the end users. So we get buy-in, we plan and prepare, as with any project, we involve and encourage, we gauge success and monitor success, and then once we've had success, we boast and then review. So let's look at these 5 stages in turn. The first is gain full buy-in. I've mentioned it a couple of times already. We want to drive involvement from all stakeholders from the offset. It's the same with any project. If you don't get the buy-in and the involvement of the stakeholders, chances are you're not going to have the best amount of success. In this case, with PC power management, the stakeholders are clearly the IT department, who are going to physically do the technical work, I would guess. The operational decision makers, the financial decision makers, the facilities management. They're the people who pay the bills. And what we're finding is that's where the disconnect generally is, The IT department implementing a solution, if they don't believe in it, what they're doing, in fact, is they're causing more help desk calls to themselves, because people are going to complain about their machines being off, turned off after they've walked away for lunch or something. They want to come back and want to sit down and work immediately. So clearly, it's about getting the IT department and those responsible for paying the power bills talking. Okay? So they're both stakeholders, facilities management included, or whatever term you would use for that. And also the end users. Right? I'm pretty sure that if you publicise the project that you're about to undergo with PC power management, put figures, targets, savings that you hope to make, both in the form of pounds and in the form of carbon, then I'm pretty sure that the users, if they see the benefit in that, will contribute and take part. If you can then implement a process whereby they can actually physically get involved, then better still, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Just a reminder of the 2 considerations that I brought up at the beginning. So the next thing is prepare, and clearly prepare. You're going to prepare for any project, but let's have a look at the differences associated with preparing for a PC power management project compared to any other project. So we're going to create logical phases and apply those across a logical timeline. That's not different to any project. We're going to identify, and I touched on this before, but we're going to identify how the users work now in order to reduce impact later. You know, I've been doing presentations and selling Verismic Power Manager for some years now, and I've been asked for templates. You know, can you give me some default policies? Well, I can give you my personal advice, but what we're finding is that what's right for one business is completely different to another business, and therefore coming up with defaults is almost bypassing the ideals associated with the way that we approach this. Because what we want to do is we want to do an analysis, gather data over a period of time, typically 2 or 3 weeks, and analyse that data to make sure where the low-hanging fruit is, where can we save those minutes, you know, the minutes where the machines are in an on state and it's not being used, and then designing power policies around how to target those minutes so that we can turn the machine off or to a sleep mode or reduced power state during that time. Does that make sense? So in effect what we're going to do, we're not going to dive in and just design a power policy and throw it out and then run reports on how much money we've saved, because what you'll do is you'll end up upsetting the end users and you'll lose their buy-in. Right? By doing that analysis at the beginning, you can actually reduce the amount of impact that you have on the users, because you know when they're working and when they're not. You know where the savings are to be made. And your power policies are designed around specifically that. So the impact to the end user, whilst there will be some, of course, will be limited. Predictive analysis. So what we have the ability to do within Verismic Power Manager is, once you've gathered this data over a 3-week period, as an example, 2 or 3 week period, you can actually design power policies and then run reports which say, we've got that data, we know how much the power cost us during that 3-week period. If I'd have deployed this power policy that I've just designed to every machine within the environment for that 3-week period, how much would I have saved? So you can actually run predictive reports based on what if I had, okay? And you'll be surprised by some of the figures associated with the savings in these predictive reports. They're very compelling and they're accurate. They're reasonably accurate. Now clearly, if you've got a 3-week period where you've gathered the data for the way the users work and then you do it during the summer holidays, you're going to get different figures and different savings. But generally speaking, these predictive reports are going to drive the way that you design your power policy, because you need to find a balance of savings versus impact to the end user. Hopefully that makes sense. It's a good practice to create 3 tiers of power policy. All right, this is light, moderate, and high impact, if you like. And the difference in real terms, just so we know what we're talking about, is you might say, well, if a machine's left on and no one's touched the machine for an hour, then turn it off or put it to a sleep mode. That might be light. For moderate, it might be 30 minutes, and for high, it might be 10 minutes. Okay? Clearly, there's different degrees of savings you're going to get in power associated with those 3 states, and the 10-minute one's going to have much more of an impact than the 1-hour one, of course. So it's about identifying the writing your power policies and then running predictive reports to see what the different degrees of savings would be on actual usage data for the period that's passed, and then rolling those policies out and running the actual savings reports for the following period. And then once you've run the predictive analysis, set realistic goals against those predictions and then exceed those goals. And it's clearly possible to do. Step 3, involve and encourage the end user. You know, I've touched on this a number of times already. We did a survey, an industry survey on power management earlier this year, and the overwhelming message from those that we surveyed was the end users hold the power to your success. Excuse me, pun. So the end users hold the power to your success, because if they're not involved and they don't believe and they don't want to, they're going to complain, they're going to reject you, because they want their machine on so they can be as productive as possible. All right, so getting them involved is huge. Involve the end user with green initiatives other than PC power management. You know, PC power management is just not a tiny bit, it's a substantial part of Green IT. And we'll have a look at, you know, what part it is in a moment, but get them involved in other green initiatives as well. Empower the end user to enhance savings furthermore. And what I mean by that is, if we create a power policy which we apply across the business, which is going to turn machines off after 30 minutes of inactivity, or put the machine into a sleep state after 30 minutes of activity, train the users and show the users how they can right-click the Verismic system tray icon and put their machine to a sleep state when they walk away from the machine. Get them involved, because clearly there's 30 minutes saved right there. Right? If they're going to go to lunch, why wait for that 30 minutes of inactivity before our solution puts them to sleep? Get them involved and let them put them to sleep straight away. 30 minutes of savings right there, just through getting them involved. And then encourage and publicise the achievements within the business. Step 4, accurately gauge success. So this is a case of monitoring your success throughout the implementation, throughout the project. I've already mentioned there's a few stages associated with best of breed project associated with PC power management. But you're only going to save power, and the savings that you make are only going to be involved within our reports if the agents are installed. So making sure that the agents are installed on every machine within the business is also extremely important. And with Verismic Power Manager 3.2, we have our agent coverage module, which does just that and produces reports based on coverage within the business. Continue to check the data in order to drive accuracy and confidence, both in yourself and in what you're saying to the business. Report regularly to gauge progress and success. So this again is going back to our standard project approach. Continually review our success against project goals. Remember, every project must have an objective, otherwise there's no point in doing it. But also against company goals, which might be wider with regard to Green IT and not just the PC power management. And once you've achieved your goals, reset, review, and enhance. And what I mean by that is, remember I mentioned about the 3 different levels of power policy that are going to be light, moderate, and high. If you started off on light, just to get users to realise that their machine's going to be turned off after a period of time, you'll make some savings. But now they're getting used to that. So review, deploy the next level up, and make more savings. You don't have to go from a situation where machines are left on continually within the business to a situation where they're turned off when someone steps away for a coffee, immediately. But that's where we want to get to, so that we can target all of those unused minutes. But you can do it in stages. And then once you've achieved success, boast, publicise, tell the world about it. Green IT, everyone's talking about it at the minute. And it's a hot topic. So publicise your successes. Saving the planet equals a good idea, I guess it does. And there's so many articles on this subject right now, not enough articles on businesses that have actually implemented and made these savings. Not enough. Because not enough businesses are doing it. It takes effort, but clearly the savings are there, if done properly. Communicate success internally and externally, and then very important, praise those staff that participated in your success. Praise them, because then they'll want to get involved even more. So there's the 5 stages. I'm going to quickly speed up for the last few slides because I want to save time for any questions that you may have. But here's some considerations based on Gartner statistics. So PCs account for 31% of all IT energy costs. Right? 2% of all carbon emissions, 2% of all carbon emissions are directly related to IT assets. And that's huge. 3/4 of that 2% is related to powering of IT assets. So that's the bit that we're after. That's the bit that we're trying to optimise. Okay? Servers use 60% of their maximum power while they do pretty much nothing. Just be available. The bottom one PC on continuously Now clearly, most PCs probably are turned off at some stage, during the night. But one PC turned on continuously equals 35 trees, 10 years to absorb the CO2 that it emits. Reminder, potential savings, 60 or 70 pounds per PC per year. Scenario 1 for a 1,000 node organisation or 1,000 machine organisation, that's 60 grand. 10,000, 600 grand. The savings are seriously to be made here. So let's have a quick overview of Verismic Power Manager. We're an enterprise PC power management solution. We have a number of different models, on-premise, hosted. We have managed service models, and also the standalone agent, which I mentioned, is released today. Dramatic cost savings, I've mentioned that already. We have extremely flexible and granular power policies associated with integration to systems management tools like Landesk and Microsoft SCCM. Verismic dynamic efficiency, remember 20% savings. Eye-catching reports, both financial and operational. User education, involvement. User awareness, capability. Accessible from anywhere at any time functionality to remove the requirement to exclude. That's the mobile app. And an ROI well within 6 months. Potentially within 3 months. Okay, thank you.